4 places to live at on a supercontinent. Number 2 will shock you. Now, I'm willing to bet my life on the fact that all of you know of Pangea Ultima. Now, that's going to be the next supercontinent in like 250 million years. But what I bet you don't know is that Ultima isn't the only possibility for the future. In fact, it isn't even the most likely to happen. It's one of the 4 main ideas, it just being the oldest proposed idea, as to what our future may hold. And today, for the next however many minutes long this godforsaken project is going to be, I'm going to be telling you the best place to live on each supercontinent variation to avoid tectonic-based natural disasters. To start with, I'm going to talk about our good friend Ultima. Now, in Ultima's case, only about 8 to 16% of the supercontinent will be habitable in the first place, thanks to the sun's ever-growing heat, brightness, and the increase of greenhouse gases from the volcanism that will be rampant in this distant future. With all of these extremely hot factors, the amount of choices for places we can live at are slim. When cross-referencing these 2 rough maps, along with the info I just gave, I would suggest settling around 45 degrees north and 20 degrees east. Otherwise, you risk either the extreme heat caused by the tectonic shifts in volcanoes, or tsunamis and earthquakes near the fault lines, specifically the fault separating Africa and Eurasia. Now, the thing about Amagia, and Amagia is a little strange compared to the rest of the possible formations, is that Antarctica won't move and converge with the rest of the plates like with all the other scenarios. Instead, while the rest of the plates come together while subducting the Pacific plate, Antarctica will stay relatively stagnant, stuck at the quote-unquote bottom of the world. With the collision of all of the other plates, large mountain ranges will form, and with them, volcanoes. Another issue with the Amagia is that with the lack of land near the equator, the ocean's convection currents will be messed up, all out of whack, causing the poles and in turn all the land around the poles to be frozen like the current ice caps. By looking between this map here and the one before it, you can roughly estimate the locations of the boundaries, which gives us a good jumping off point for where we want to settle to avoid these issues. Since Amagia is predicted to have significantly cooler climate than Ultima, we aren't limited in the aspect of heat waves and the sort, and instead in the aspect of frigid tundras. So I would propose living either near the tips or bottom of Africa or the bottom of South America. That way you are about as far as you possibly could be from any boundaries, which means being as far from fault lines as possible, which means a lower chance for earthquakes and subsequently tsunamis, while also putting you closer to the equator for a lower risk of freezing temperatures. The next supercontinent I'm going to talk about is the one named Arica. Now, Arica, much like Pangea, Ultima, and Nova Pangea, forms one landmass near the equator. Unlike Amagia, Arica would have much more beachy, tropical climate near the edges and a much more dry, arid one near the center, due to the landlocking nature and lack of water distribution to those areas. In fact, an extremely large portion of the supercontinent would be cut off from the ocean and or water sources, leaving you to be stuck in between plenty of boundary lines with no easy access to H2O. Here's a video produced by a team from NASA that showcases the formation of Arica. Given that prophesied fact, much like Amagia, I would suggest that you would live near the edges of the supercontinent in order to prevent from being cut off from any supply chain. Specifically, since the climate would be hotter, I suggest living near either half of the Eurasian plate that broke apart near the beginning. That way you are, as I stated before, as far from any boundary lines as possible, which would prevent any disasters. I feel I keep reiterating that fact. The final supercontinent I'm going to discuss, I use that term lightly, is called Novopangea. Novopangea is a variant that stems from the suggested closing of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the Atlantic Ocean right now is technically growing, and the Pacific Ocean is actually closing, which, don't get me wrong, will eventually contribute to the formation and collision of the supercontinent somehow, but based on the quote-unquote planned movement of the tectonic plates, the Atlantic Ocean is assumed to be closed later on. That is, if Novopangea is the outcome our world takes. Much like Orica, there won't be much water and precipitation distributed near or to the center of Novopangea, which will likely cause similar events like a desert or tundra forming within it, like I've described before when talking about Orica's arid future. Now, for where to settle, based on this rough depiction of Novopangea, there is a clear spot far, far away from everything else. Yes, I am talking about the tip of Africa again. For the second time, the end bit of Africa is extremely far from any continental boundaries, which, as I've said plenty of times before, and you are all probably getting tired of hearing, lowers the risk of earthquakes and tsunamis. It's almost like being near a boundary increases your chance of being hit by a tectonic plate-based natural disaster. Isn't that crazy? Well, that's that. Nothing else. I'm done. Not sure how to end this.